Hello, everyone. We're back with another live stream. Finally, I have found time. Believe it or not. Now, I was watching this on my watch later videos, and I've found something interesting, and it's got to do with animation, and it is from Glitch Productions. One of the I've been watching them for a long time. I've been watching them ever since um, the SMG4 days. Like not the classic ones, but ever since before they became Glitch, or they started Glitch. Before, like we're talking about 2014 around there. Yeah, and so they're saying something, and I wanna to talk about it.
Thanks, guys. We'll take it from here.
God?
Yeah, there we go.
Hey guys, Kevin and Luke here, and we are so happy to officially announce that the Glitch Inn is open.
Glitch has been doing really well lately, thanks to your guys' support, and due to the success of our animation shows, the entire animation industry has been noticing what we've been doing online, and we have the opportunity to make some serious change.
You know, we don't say that lightly. Really recently, over these past few months, a lot of executives just in around the animation Hollywood sphere have been contacting us and have just all been asking, how the heck do you guys do it? What is...
I mean, it's really amazing just how far these guys have progressed, and I'm not sure if they're gonna talk about this. I mean, this was made a year ago, but I think everyone knows that animation, especially Western animation, more specifically American animation, the type like American animation, it has been fooled with a particular ideology, and it's one that has to do with like Hollywood, and I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, it has to do with propaganda, propaganda like all of these liberal ideas. Yeah, like I mean, for example, just think about it. Look at The Last of Us. Oh no, that's not animation. But if we look at the animations, there was one that like the original Crunchyroll animation. Crunchyroll, um, originals. It was one about like they tried to do a series of sorts. This no. This one. This series in particular, it's like it got even the anime man. No, not the anime man. It got the Lost Pause novel. The guy who likes anime. It even got him to criticize it. To criticize this series, and for numerous reasons, not just for like the ideological stuff, but this anime series, it's obviously made Western because you know it's Western when you start seeing a lot of liberal ideas in the sense that like you try to put it, but at the expense of like actual narrative, actual plots. Like you're just putting there just to purchase signal. Like, oh look, we're making an anime or an animated show about um about I don't know, LGBTQ plus representation or uplifting minorities or something like that. You just and so like a bunch of Hollywood, and a bunch of like all these like Western American studios. They have all been focused on basically filling out boxes, trying to be as inclusive, trying to be as like having all these like different races, genders, and like and sexualities under in one single show, to the point where where it comes at the expense of actual narrative, actual plotline, and sometimes even the animation itself. Sometimes the animation literally is sloppy. It's sloppy and it looks bad. And so, and even then, like there will obviously be people who will not watch a show just because it has like, I don't know, different sexualities or different gender, or different gender like narratives or like stuff like I know a lot of, like, for example, back in the days, like during the 90s, I would assume, or before then, like, I mean, just look at the American audience, how much they've changed. um Back in the 90s, when the original Sailor Moon released, Japan had to censor, or no, it wasn't Japan, it was like whoever whoever imported the Sailor Moon anime, the original series. Well, they imported it, and they basically had like the lesbian relationship between I think it was the Sailor Uranus, I think. Yeah, Sailor Uranus and the other one, and Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune, I believe, or I don't know, Sailor Uranus, girlfriend, Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune, basically. They were a relationship since the original show, but in America they had to censor it because they knew a bunch of the American audience, they would immediately just tune it out, even if the lesbian relationship was like on the background, like it was like side character, like it wasn't the main characters, but they were the sidelines. And so now we've gotten to the point where, like, now we're seeing people who like don't mind having like all these sexualities being like apart, like being a side characters and everything and whatnot. But the problem that many people have is that it's just so abundant, and it gets to the point where like there is really not a lot of diversity, ironically speaking. Like there are all these like studios, Western American studios. They're always trying to like be diverse, be like egalitarian, and be inclusive, but by trying to do so, they're like diminishing the amount of animations they make, where like you no longer have animated studios and animated stories where literally there's not a single bit of romance at all, and not a single bit of like different gender stuff, and b, there are no longer that many like straight and cisgender animations, like where they're the main characters. And obviously, and like that's something, like if you want to sell a market, if you want to sell to a wide audience, you really have to like, you either go for like the stories, like romantic stories that are more popular, which are pretty much straight romantic stories, if I'm correct, or try to literally avoid any of those divisive stuff. Like, so if you're gonna go for a romantic story and you want to go and sell it, you want to sell it to a specific audience. So if you sell it to a specific audience, which is something that anime does really well, like Japan, for example, they have all these like yuri sections and yaoi sections, and those are categories. So like if you're not into yuri, then just don't watch the yuri section. If you're not into yaoi, then just don't watch the yaoi section. Just go and for the slice of life romantic section, where pretty much it's gonna be almost like 90% of the animes over there is gonna be just straight relationships. So there's literally something for everyone, and that's and what's good about, and also like if you look at shonen anime, look at Dragon Ball. In Dragon Ball, you don't really have like that many gay or lesbian representations. Yet it's one of the most popular stories and anime, and the reason as to why is because it's the fighting and the plot. Like there is romance, like for example between Vegeta and Bulma, or Chi Chi and Goku, or like Gohan and this other girl, I forgot her name. Like there are these romance stories, but they're usually like they're mainly like they highlight mainly as some sort of filler, for example, or it happens like it's relevant, but it's also not to the point where it's like put right into your face, like in Slice of Life, for example. And it's mainly like about saving, being heroic, having friendships. and these are all like more universal. And the same thing. Look at One Piece. One Piece, like literally, like the main crew, the main cast, none of them are in a relationship, and they also avoid representing like having these characters like either in gay scenarios or in lesbian scenarios because they know that's going to be a turnoff. They know it's going to deviate some people, and also like again, shonen anime, it's directed mainly towards young guys. And what do most young guys watch? Well, they love two things. They love hot fan service, or they love cool fighting stories, because part of that I guarantee you, they either enjoy it because they just enjoy watching it, or they enjoy it because they like to self-insert themselves as one of the main characters. Like literally, like there is the meme of the Goku meme, where you have Goku, and there's a bunch of young men from all over the world who are from different races, different ethnicities, and sometimes maybe even different sexualities, but they all see Goku and they see, yeah, that's me. Or maybe they do the same with Naruto or with Luffy, and so they're not trying to like a character that's grit and good will transcend any sort of like racial barrier. Just look at how just look at like one of the great examples of like a black anime character. Um I don't know. I don't think there's any, or maybe there is. I mean, if you count the tan characters, I guess they would be like kind of like Southeast Asian at most. But even then, like for example, like those tan characters, there are like some of them. Like I think even like there are plenty of anime. But I'm trying to find out a good one, a good example. I don't know, but again, like if we look at like Star Wars with Mace Windu, what's it? That's what he's called, Mace Windu. Mace Windu, yeah. He's black, and he's deeply loved by the Star Wars fandom, and they don't love him because he's black. No, they love him because he's really cool, he's really heroic, and he has a really cool looking lightsaber. He's a good, well written character, and the people who love him, they are people who can relate to him in many multiple different ways that doesn't have to do with his race. So like that's something that these big studios like Hollywood, they don't understand. They are trying to like they reason their and let's be real, why are they pushing for these kind of like ideologies or propagandas? Well, it's simple, because they think it's gonna make them money. They truly think that just because they have like all these diverse characters, people are gonna tune in to watch them. But no, that's not true. People are not going to tune in to watch a a movie with a bunch of different races and genders and sexualities if none of the characters are relatable. And like and you can say like and I would say like gender, like between male and female and different other like genders outside of the traditional male and female, gender is a huge barrier for relatability. It is a huge barrier. I mean, just think of how many. I mean, it's a huge barrier for a lot of people. It's not that, and that doesn't mean that there are people who cannot relate to them. I mean, sometimes you can relate to them in like different aspects, but usually a lot of people don't relate to them. Like, for example, many girls relate to like Zelda for her like all of the things she does. She's like a selfless, kind soul, and she sacrifices a lot, and she's really smart, and she's really smart. And then Breath of the Wild Zelda, if you look at the lore behind her, she couldn't awake her powers, so she tried to still be useful and help her people by turning into science and technology. And so obviously, like that, of course, like many girls would probably relate to her in that front, and even some guys could probably relate to her for like, you know, the overall feeling of trying to be, you know, even if you cannot like have this super grand power, you still try to be useful and helpful in other ways. Like look at and in real life, that's a great example. In real life, not everyone is like not everyone can like is gonna go and fight in war or plan for these wars, like when it comes to like in self-defense, you know, like in World War II, for example. um Not everyone wanted to or could go to war during World War II, but they still helped in other ways. I mean, just look at the plenty of women that took a role by like being nurses and helping all these wounded soldiers and men. Or look at the other women that helped to like gather funds for the military at that time. So it's again it's a universal feelings and universal sentiments. But when you try to explicitly have characters where you're trying to say like when you put an emphasis on gender, then you're gonna turn off people. Like look at the remakes of like many like Snow White remake, for example. She was literally a character that was rewritten into like being that, oh, I'm a woman, I don't need a man to save me and everything. Like I will say that it is true that women don't need men to save you, but that women don't need men to save them. But you also have to acknowledge that a man can be helpful too. That's what you have to acknowledge. You don't have to be saved by a man, but that doesn't mean that when time comes and you need help from someone, a man is gonna be useless. Because you're saying that men can literally, like, you can do everything that men can. Well, if you can do everything that men can, then why don't you go to the lumber facilities? Why don't you go to the oil rigs? Why don't you go to the construction work? And I'm not talking about working at this like secretary or white collar areas. No, I'm talking about working at the blue collar areas, like the ones that require you to lift heavy stuff or withstand extreme conditions like the extreme sun and all that stuff. Or like use heavy machinery. Well, why aren't they? Well, it's because they women can do what everything that men can do, and that's biology. And there's nothing bad about it. You see, like I've seen plenty of like women who go like with toxic masculinity, saying toxic masculinity and everything. What you know what I would consider toxic masculinity? I would consider someone who has toxic masculinity as or is being has yeah as like a man who looks down on women for literally not being able to achieve what men can do in terms of like for example strength. Like if you have a daughter and you are forcing her to constantly fight against strong brute men and she keeps on losing and you keep insulting her and berating her because she's weak and she can't fight against them and, or defeat them, then I would say that's toxic masculinity because you're putting this expectation onto a woman over something that she really has no control over. And again, toxic femininity would be essentially like it would be when you're a woman and say you have a son and you are berating your son for say not being what can I say for basically not being too soft or not being too like or like basically you're berating your son for not being more calm, more emotional, or more doing stuff that like women are best at. And so like that would be toxic femininity. It's when you're looking down onto someone for not being masculine enough or feminine enough, and that's basically like toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. It's not like for example like everyone should be allowed and should be free to express themselves however they want. Like if you don't want to work at those places, that's alright. But if you want to, that's also fine. Like your value and your worth It's not gonna change based on as to whether you try to work at a traditional in a traditional gender role or you try to work outside the traditional gender role. Your worth or your level of respect that you must earn isn't any less. Because at the end of the day, what matters is how you behave and how you treat others. Like I personally, I don't think someone who works at like like minimum wage jobs is any less or inferior than someone who say works at like animation, for example, or in the entertainment industry. Because everyone is just doing something to make a living. And anyways, the thing that comes here with this like Hollywood studios. Sorry for like going on this huge tangent. I deviated a lot from the topic. That the reason as to why like Western American studios they are failing and they are wondering, literally wondering, how is it that an indie animation studios like Glitch is so popular and being so profitable? Well, it's simple. There is no propaganda. There is no ideological propaganda, and there is nothing that's divisive. There's nothing that's divisive. There is nothing that's I would say too controversial. And again, every studio, what they should do is they should market to a specific audience. And Glitch, what they're doing right now, they're trying to appeal to everyone. So if they're trying to appeal to everyone, they're obviously going to avoid having like different sexualities, different genders, different like even getting into pronouns. They're gonna avoid doing that most of the time. They're gonna avoid doing that. And so how do you appeal to a broad audience and be successful? Well, simple. Just focus on creating a good narrative story that's entertaining. For example, Murder Drones. It's super entertaining, it's intriguing, it's creepy, and yes, there is a romance aspect between Uzi and Anne. But it's like that's like about the only confirmed relationship. No, there's also Uzi's mom and like Uzi's dad. They're also a relationship, but we don't really see much of them. But in general, that the main relationship is between Uzi and Anne, and like I would say that's a straight relationship. So it is basically like a safe option. It is not going to be divisive enough. And like, sure, people can ship on whoever characters how they want. People can like create. Oh no, this character has like multiple different genders and whatever. That's alright. But as long as the creator themselves doesn't come and explicitly state, oh no, this character is like XYZ gender, then everything's gonna be fine. And like, and yeah, again, like, what indie developer studios like the animation industry is literally going through the exact same path as the video game industry, in which like the big corporate ones, the AAA ones, especially in America and in the Western side of things, but mainly America, are failing because they're constantly focused on pushing a narrative, on pushing an ideology, pushing propaganda, pushing like again things that are divisive, things that people don't want, because this is a reminder to them of reality, of real life. Why do people watch animation stuff? Why do people watch anime? Why do people play video games? Well, because they want to escape reality. They want to be entertained by it. They want to ignore their current surroundings. I mean, just think about it. Why does someone want to watch Dragon Ball? Why does someone want to watch Naruto? Why does someone want to watch One Piece? Why does someone want to watch Yu-Gi-Oh or JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Well, because they want to see an interesting story and they just want to skip from the reality. Or just look at the slice of life genre and the isekai genre. Why do people watch them? Because people just want to forget their reality. Because if people wanted to say like be exposed to different sexualities, genders, and like pronouns and everything. Well, they already have like real life, and as like and the same thing with video games, with like role playing games where you have like all these like ugly characters. I mean, just think about it. If you're fat and you are not allowed to play as a character that's thinner or much more like attractive, then what's the point of playing the role playing game? What's the point? Because the role playing game is literally about the player taking a role, and yeah, like for example, I'm chubby or fat myself. I am fat. I will admit it. I have like what's it called, strays or whatever, like those things that get like super red on your body. And so when I want to play a game, I want to play a game as a strong, muscular man. As I want to play as a handsome, attractive man. I don't want to play as someone who will remind me of myself. Because at that point, I might as well just look at the mirror rather than play the game. It's straight up. And to say, and I'm sure there are plenty of women who are, again, also fat as me, who are also fat, and they want to play as an attractive woman. But if they cannot play as an attractive woman, then why the hell would they play the game? They might as well just look at the mirror. And that's it. And yeah, like, and again, like, what is the main purpose of businesses, of like animation and entertainment? Well, the main goal should be to sell a good service to the customer. And in entertainment, that means you want to entertain them. You don't want to lecture them. That's what schools are for. That's why people go to college for. Entertainment is, again, as the name implies, is to entertain the customer. So you don't want to go and put these like non-binary stuff like in Dragon Age Belgard, because you're telling the players like, oh no, this is what you should or shouldn't do to a non-binary person and everything, or this is how you should apologize or something, like if you mispronounce them or something like that, or misgender them. Well, that's obviously gonna turn off plenty of players, because one, that just reminds them of like the HR department at work or college or school. It reminds them of reality. It reminds them of something that they do have to deal with in real life, and it defeats the purpose of entertainment. They are not being entertained. They are being lectured by these massive corporations. And the same goes for like right-wing people or like right-wing ideologies. Like lately they haven't been being like forcing their ideology, but I will tell you, if there were like, say, animes, or like, I guess you have to look at anime, because anime, they do have religion and they do have different sexualities and different genders, but they do it in a way that doesn't seem like lecturing. It doesn't seem patronizing. It doesn't seem like, oh, you viewer, you're an ignorant, let me teach you about this and that. No, they're just telling you a story. That's basically what it is. And in video games, Eastern developers from China, Korea, Japan, and even like Eastern Europe, well, they just literally just have a game. And sometimes they can have different sexualities, but that's basically optional. It's not forced. You don't have to subject yourself to it. And also, and again, and most of these like Eastern developers from Eastern Europe, China, Korea, and Japan, whenever they have like these different like religion or like different sexualities and genders, or races, what they're not patronizing to you. They're not telling you, haha, you player, you're an ignorant, let me teach you about this or that. No, they are just literally telling you a story or giving you a good game with gameplay, with good gameplay, basically. So that's what entertainment industry should be about, and that's why like the big corporates in animation and video game, they're losing because they've lost the plot. They are so out of touch. They don't understand what people want. They don't understand why people even tune in to watch animation stories or play video games. They've forgot why people seek these mediums. And that's because they've these like massive corporations. They only care about about being politically correct and being being politically correct and trying to earn money, but because there's this huge apparatus, like this bureaucracy, like from like critics, like or journalists, like these types of people. Well, they are paid to be politically correct. So it's kind of like an Ouroboros in which the journalists and the critics are paid to be politically correct and are paid to give a good review of these like massive corporations, massive AAA corporations, and then these massive AAA corporations are trying to be politically correct as a result of these journalists and critics. And whenever one of the critics or journalists tries to like be actually genuine and say what they like, be genuine about their criticism or like opinions about the product, well, then they get labeled as these kinds of like stuff. So it's like they're pushing this like narrative, like a self-destructing narrative they're trying to push, and so they're obviously losing. And then you have indie developers and double A or like 1A or single A or like indie video game creators and indie animator studios like Glitch, for example. Well, they are focused on earning money, but at the same time they're focused on listening to the audience. And we're not talking about an audience that just logs in onto Twitter or Reddit where all they do is just complain. They're not going into those places because like the so-called modern audience, it doesn't exist. It only exists on Twitter and on Reddit and Blue Sky. And all they do is just complain whenever complain or praise the product whenever you're being like diverse enough. And if you compare the amount of users that do all this complaining when they complain about you not being diverse enough or not inclusive enough, or whenever they praise you for being inclusive or diverse, well, the numbers and the metrics, they will not be translated to the number of views in your product. That's or number of players on sales. So that's why you usually end up with a failing product. So these indie developers, well, they're smart, and because they're indie, they're not bound to these like bureaucratic steps. So because they are basically free, what they do is literally like just do what they think is best. And if you look at mortar drones, there isn't that big of like it isn't divisive to me personally. And again, like even between like the relationship between Uzi and N, the amount of like content that is related to that when compared to the like actual like overarching story of murder drones, it's literally like probably around 2 to 10, like 2 to 8, for example, in a ratio of 2 to 8 out of 10 basically. So like there's like it's like a small portion of the entire story, so it's not like the main focus, but it is there, but it's not divisive enough. And again, straight relationships and cisgender characters are like safe options. They're not gonna be divisive enough. But if you have like gay characters or lesbian characters and they are like the main focus, then obviously it's gonna be divisive. But again, and just because it's divisive, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. If you want to do it, you should be able to go ahead and do it. But you just basically have to market to this specific audience. Don't try to appeal to everyone. Because if you do so, you're gonna end up appealing to nobody. Yeah, you want to appeal to a specific audience. Choose which your audience is. Or if you're gonna put like LGBTQ plus stories, then market to that audience. Or if you're gonna have like about gender exploration or identity exploration, then market to people who are interested into that. And of course, like the things about selling a product and everything, you want to make sure that these people who you're trying who are you trying to market to are people who will actually consume your content and not just comment about it on Twitter or Reddit or Blue Sky. You want to make sure that they are actually engaged customers, engaged users. And by engaged, I don't mean like commenting or doing stuff. No, I mean like actually, like, for example, like watching the entire video, for example, and leaving likes, and not necessarily commenting, but just enough with the views, you know. Like, for example, Glitch has 14.2 million subscribers, and they have 10 million views on this video. And you could say that this million views could perhaps be, for example, other users who may perhaps not be subscribed. But it is safe to say that like a good majority of the subscribers actually engaged in watching the video. And another example would be like, for example, like users who play the game, like in Genshin Impact, for example. There is like the whole like voice acting drama and everything with like Karina and everything, and all these other like SAG-AFTRA actors and everything. Well, people can complain about these voice actors all they want, but if they're not like part of the Genshin player base, then there really isn't. Then the ones who have a lot of support actually are the voice actors. But everyone knows that most of the people who are complaining about these voice actors in SAG-AFTRA are actual players, and these actual players, in a twist of fate, they actually end up siding with the company, and that's usually rare. And it should be basically a wake-up call that not every organization is gonna be full of bad people or good people. In a majority sense, that's never going to be the case, because virtue of being human. The virtue of being human is basically the fact that there will be people that will be good and there will be people that will be bad, and some organizations will be a majority of either of those. And again, maybe, and that's not to say that, say, MiHoYo or HoYoverse or the company is gonna be always good. No, it's just that sometimes interests align. For example, if video game, if these like indie developers, they're trying to create engaging and less divisive stories, then that aligns with the interests of people who seek entertainment, who basically just wanna enjoy a story or a good gameplay, and not be exposed or subject to some sort of like propaganda of any sort. Because I guarantee you, plenty of players would dislike it when you say you start teaching them about religion or about morality and stuff like that. They will definitely be like, all right, I'm out from here, basically. So yeah, I know I've talked about this like liberal stuff, because that's just basically how it is. You have to look at it. How many people, like right now in the gaming industry and in the animation industry, we're having issues from like left propaganda and ideology. But I'm gonna tell you that in the 90s, when entertainment industry was booming, especially in the animation and video game side of things, the ones who were pushing the propaganda and ideology were people from the right, the conservative stuff, the moral stuff. That's why we ended up coming up with the term of Puritan. Puritan are people who basically like are against fan service, for example, or are against any sort of like non-traditional roles or depictions. And yeah, so I would say that most people who enjoy entertainment, especially in animation and in video game, they're actually quite in the middle, believe it or not. They're actually quite in the middle. And the only reason they seem right wing is because the ones who are pushing this narrative and are calling them out are people from the left. But I guarantee you, if at some point people from the right start getting mad at gamers and people who watch animation, like anime for example, will think the people from the right, because they are complaining from like these like people who consume video games and animation, well then people who consume video game and animation will seem like left wing, for example. So it's all about optics, it's all about perspectives. That's basically just how the world works. And again, and if I remember, for example, for like the amazing digital circus from Glitch, the creator is actually trans, and they've made, or she, I think, yeah, she made a really good story. She's not including any sort of like trans ideology or propaganda. No, she's just literally telling a funny story with sometimes serious moments between the characters, but none of the characters are say like, oh, I am of XYZ gender, or like non-traditional gender, like or XYZ sexuality. And in this case, you know, race really doesn't matter in the Amazing Digital Circus. It really doesn't, because everyone is like some kind of like funky looking being, basically. And so, and yeah, and I would say that maybe like on episode 5, Zuvul, who in my opinion has a female voice actress and sounds female to me, I just go like, I think of Zuvul as a girl, like she, her, you know. But I think Kane, the guy from like, you know, who runs the circus, he did refer to Zuvul as them. But you know why that wasn't as divisive, or that why that wasn't as bad? Well, it's simple. It's because it was just one clip, and also Zuvul didn't seem to like point it out. You know, like for example, if they somehow made Kane revert to Zuvul as a girl, or something like that, and then Zuvul started acting and crashing out about it, like, oh no, I am a they them, I'm not she her, and then like everything, and like basically kind of like that the non-binary character from Dragon Age the Belgard, then well, one, the Amazing Digital Circus will be met with criticism and controversy, and there will be people who will complain about it. And I'm sure Glitch doesn't want to get involved in controversies. They don't want to. And again, any good company doesn't want to get into controversy. And again, the controversy has to obviously make sense, you know. If the controversy is rooted on like just trivial stuff, then yeah, who cares? Then yeah, who cares? But if you're trying to like say push a message, or then like people from the actual Glitch studio start like basically looking down on the viewers who actually care about these issues, or like these stuff, like the ones who are complaining about, say, Zuvul, for example, like being like this Dragon Age Belger character, then obviously Glitch is gonna lose popularity and lose support. But I'm sure Glitch is smart. I'm sure they're smart. I'm sure they're observant of how people react online, and of how like where they should put their priorities. And so that's why they're basically like not being divisive as much. And they're not divisive on purpose, and they're not trying to push a message or propaganda. So that's basically what indie animations and indie video game developers are focusing on. And a great example would be like, say, the French RPG Clair Obscur Expedition 33, or Expedition 33 Clair Obscur, it's made from a French company. And again, it's an indie game, and they literally only have, all they're doing is just telling a story. There, there may be some romantic aspects, I don't know, but they're mainly focusing on telling a story and having good gameplay and entertaining the customer, the audience. They're not trying to be, oh, look at me, look at how diverse my story or inclusive is. My inclusive, diverse, and equality this story is. They're not trying to do that. So that's basically what most of these studios are. And again, like simple little pronouns like that, like say calling, for example, like suvu, like them or anything. I think that's acceptable. I don't think it's that divisive. I mean, if it's just 1 second and that's it, fine. Yeah, there's nothing wrong, I would say. Now, sure, maybe some people may complain about that, but I would say that unless the character is being obnoxious about the pronouns, then it's fine. It's fine. If you personally ask me, though, I will always refer to Suvul as a girl, and it's gonna be she/her to me. But if in the animation, the characters keep referring to her like as they, them, or something like that, that's also fine by me. As long as Subul isn't being an unlikable character, isn't being obnoxious about like the pronouns thing, I don't have an issue with that. Yeah, straight up. Like I just don't. Maybe now some people will, but I think a lot of people don't have a problem with pronouns. What they do have a problem is when you have characters or creators who crash out whenever you use different pronouns on the characters. Like for example, if me seeing Suvul as a girl and using she/her pronouns on her on the character, and then that made someone at Glitch crash out about it and complain about it, and point out about it, I'd be like, bro, really? You really acting out like this over this simple little trivial stuff? Over this simple little trivial stuff? And obviously people will clown on this Glitch person if this does end up happening. It's just a theoretical scenario. That's why like from Mortar Drones to the Amazing Digital Circus to the Maggie's Paradise, or was it Sunset Paradise? Let me go look back. And also like there was also like Meta Runner, I think. Yeah, you have Murder Drones, The Amazing Digital Circus, Gaslight District, and yeah, Meta Runner, and Sunset Paradise. They're all telling a story. They're all being entertaining. There is no propaganda. There aren't obnoxious characters who are like are not appealing, are not popular. Like again, that character from like that character from like again that character from Dragonish Belgard, Tash, I can't remember the name. That character like Tosh, the way Tosh acted was extremely like unlikable. So yeah, and again, there aren't that many studios in the West or in America that create stories that are basically that, just stories. Like for example, like if you look about it, there was a point in time where American animation and Western studios, they all created animated stories and video games that were appealing to the people, that were entertaining. And then somewhere down the line, they decided to focus on all these like divisive issues and controversial issues, and basically having modern day real life terms. Like for example, one could say that the Powerpuff Girls, yeah, Powerpuff Girls, that was, I would say, like one of the first American Western animation series where you had an all female cast, and all they did was just fighting, and people loved it. And that's because the Powerpuff Girls, they never made anything about their gender. They never did it. And they also never acted in a way that, they demeaned men or looked down on men. Nowadays, when you look at like the current corporate stuff that Hollywood makes, you have all these female characters that make everything about their gender, and constantly look down on men. And if it's not on men who they look down upon, they look down on straight people for some reason. And I would say that's kind of outrageous, because imagine if you had like, like it's one thing when it's like done as a sort of like a joke, or like dark edgy joke, and that's about it, but you also make fun of everyone. Like, for example, the Dove series of ghost stories, that one is hilarious. Or Boondocks, for example, that one's hilarious, and that's because it has dark jokes, and the dark jokes are not just for one single group. They are for everyone. They are for everyone. If one group is being insulted, then every single group will be insulted as well, and that's what makes it funny. That's literally what makes it funny. So yeah, so if you're gonna, like, it's either all or nothing, and in this case, there is a clear push from Hollywood and this corporate American Western stuff, Western studios. They're looking down on a specific group of people, and the ones who they look down are on people who they deem are privileged, quote unquote. And those people, well, who they are, well, they're either they're white people, or they're straight people, or cisgender people. Those are the groups they tend to look down upon. And it's almost like you barely see a character that is straight, white, and cisgender at the same time, and is portrayed in a good positive light. You barely see that. And that's me not being white. Like, for example, like, this is the funny thing from all these like companies that push diversity, equality, and inclusivity, DEI, is that they're trying to, like, like basically favor minorities, like non-white people. Well, I'm not white, and I certainly do not, and I certainly don't feel like this DEI's push is appealing, and that's because, as some people say, it infantilizes minorities, and it makes people like, and again, I guess here's when, like, I may not be white, but I am straight and I am a man, cisgender man. So that's obviously, under the like the minority tier list, I would be like just basically above the white straight man, cisgender man. But we're at the bottom, and we get looked down upon. If we don't get looked down upon for being based on race, we get looked down upon based on our sexual preference or on our gender. And here's the thing. I don't have a problem with like people who are different sexualities. In fact, I am actually I have a tons of family friends and family members who are of different sexualities, and we also have a different not a different a family friend that's trans, and we also have we have a family friend that's a trans man and another family friend that's a trans woman, and I get along with them fine, and I'm also friends and we also get along with people of different races, from like black to white people, and even Asians, and like we get along with them, no problem. And so this isn't coming from this like kind of like, oh, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're sexist, you're homophobic or transphobic. No, this isn't coming from that. If you actually knew who I am, you would actually be surprised that I'm actually one of the most inclusive people. But it's just that I want a fair game. I don't want propaganda. I don't want to be lectured by these massive corporations as to what is right. Especially, like when it comes to like Hollywood, I don't want to be told about what is right or morally wrong, when the people who are in Hollywood are living all these luxurious lifestyles, having mansions and traveling to all these different places over the world. Meanwhile, here I am, stuck in an apartment living with my family, and I don't even have a room. My room is literally just a living room. So I don't want to be. My life is already hell. I don't want to be exposed to hell in a metaphorical sense. I don't want to be told, be patronized, be looked down upon by these massive, ironically privileged studios and corporations, either from the video game or animation industries. So that's why I appreciate indie developers, indie creators, because they are not patronizing me, they're not looking down on me, they are just doing what they're meant to do, entertain me. And they're not telling me about calling me all these insults just because I feel a certain way about depictions in media. Like, for example, one of the reasons as to why the anime industry is doing so well right now is because you can enjoy any kind of anime. Like, for example, the 100 Girlfriends anime, that's usually a series where I would watch because it's a harem anime. But the only reason I don't do it is because there's a lesbian kissing, and that's it. But I don't look down or complain to people who enjoy that. If they want to watch it, that's fine by me. Same thing with Sailor Moon. It's a girl story, and trust me, I do actually watch girl stories, and not like girls love stories like Juri. No, I mean like girl stories as in like the main protagonist is a girl. I don't mind them. I don't mind those kinds of stuff. I actually sometimes enjoy them, and like, but I'm not interested in say like for example, I would watch Powerpuff Girls. I don't mind that because it's entertaining. Even if they're like basically like little to no guys, I still find it entertaining. But when it comes to like say romantical aspects, as long as one of the characters is completely straight, I am fine. And by straight, I mean like like actually is attracted to the opposite gender, and is not being kissed by someone of the same gender. Like in Sailor Moon, we have Usagi, I think. Usagi, the blonde girl, the main protagonist. Well, in the 90s original show, in both the Japanese version and American version, she's interested in this masked guy. But now in the current stories and retcons and everything, she gets kissed by Sailor Uranus. And in my opinion, I think I also like I don't watch lesbian stories, but if there are lesbian stories and they're side characters, I don't mind them. And I'm a big fan of loyalty. And so when I see like a lesbian character that has a girlfriend and ends up kissing another girl who isn't her girlfriend, I'd be like, bro, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? I'd obviously be like that. And the same thing with like, I mean, unless of course this like lesbian girl was going for like a harem of her own. But in say like the Sailor Uranus example, she's not going for a harem of her own. She's just kissing around, and I'm not interested in that. But I have no problem with people who enjoy that. And so yeah. And anyways, back to the video is that indie developers know what the audience wants, or at least they know what kind of audience they want to cater to. They know what kind of audience they want to cater to, and so because they know what their audience is, they know exactly what to put in them. And when they're trying to be appealing, they can sometimes get away with a few things here and there. Like for example, with the Suval pronoun thing, with Suval being referred to as them, they can easily get away with that because the show isn't about pronouns, and Zuval isn't an unlikable, obnoxious character whose sole identity is about her pronouns. No. If anything, I'd say almost Zuval's character is based around Zuval basically like not liking the way she looks. She doesn't like the fact that she's like this kind of like Lego piece set, like Rubik's kind of style. They like the character of Suval doesn't like that. That's what her main identity revolves around. It doesn't revolve around Suval being a they them or like anything of the sort. So Zuval is likable, and again, Like that's basically part of like what market research is. And I think market research is actually something that you'll learn. Market research definition. Market research is an organized effort to gather information about target markets and customers. It involves studying the requirements of various markets, the acceptability of products, and methods of developing or exploiting new markets. Market research is an important component of business strategy and helps maintain competitiveness. And I think indie developers, market research is their main effort, their main forte, their main strength. That's why they're capable of having all these appealing stories and having all these viewers and customers. It's because they know who they are marketing the product to, who they are delivering the product for, and because they know they can basically focus on just telling the story in a way that's not divisive. Because I mean, just think about it. And again, like look at The Last of Us Part 1 versus Last of Us Part 2. Why was The Last of Us Part 2 received so negatively? Well, it's because it was a huge deviation from what The Last of Us Part 1 used to be. The Last of Us Part 1 was about Joel, and there wasn't barely any romantic elements. Sure, there were like Joel was straight and he had a wife and had a kid, but the wife and kid ended up dying. So it's kind of like the romance part of the story like was over. That's it. And it was like in the very beginning of the game. And the rest of it was just Joel being a protective figure of Ellie. But then in The Last of Us Part 2, they focus on Ellie being lesbian. And whenever Joel is in there, he barely has any relevant story. He's no longer like the cool looking guy from Part 1. And so Joel basically and what also deviated and alienated people away was the fact that you killed a fan favorite character in a way that's not respectful to the character. Like many people understand sacrifices or loved characters dying, but what matters is how the characters die. What matters is how the characters die. And like great example would be whenever Goku died for the first time, he sacrificed himself, and people were like, "Damn, it sucks, but he did it for a good cause to save the Earth." But then you compare that sacrifice with Joel's death. Well, Joel was killed, but he wasn't killed in a heroic way, like he died fighting. No, Joel died like a dog, powerless, unable to fight back, and basically was killed in the most humiliating way possible by a golf club. I would say like it would have been much more honorable if Joel was killed by a gun, but he wasn't. He was killed by a golf club, so his death was basically agonizing and painful and slow. And obviously, what was going to be much more divisive was the fact that you have to play as his killer, Abby. And the first thing that you see as Abby is her literally having, getting railed upon. And obviously, that was like a great insult. That was an insult to all the players. So that's why people disliked it. And so that's why, like, if you want to tell a lesbian story, tell it from the beginning. If you want to tell a gay story, tell it from the beginning. If you want to tell some like a story about being trans, do it from the beginning. Don't just do it in the middle of like the series or introduce it in the middle of the series, because that's just gonna push people away. It's gonna alienate audiences. And I mean, just think about this. Just look at how Adventure Time changed. I remember watching Adventure Time, Steven Universe, and even a regular show. And out of all these cartoons, and also like The Amazing World of Gumball, and out of all these cartoons that I grew up watching, The Amazing World of Gumball and regular show were the only ones who didn't really deviate by having all these different sexualities. Like, sure, there was, no, yeah, they barely deviated. Now, sure, there was like the balloon kind of had like a female voice, but was a guy, and the cactus was also a female voice, but was a female. That was because they were just side characters. People just didn't care, and also they were funny too. So it wasn't like they were gonna be unlikable. And in regular show, I don't know if there were like gay or lesbian relationships. I don't know if there were any, but it definitely deviated in the way the story was conducted. But it was still likable. Everything was still like it was still appealing. But then you look at Adventure Time, it went from Finn being in a relationship with either Princess Bubblegum or Marceline to Princess Bubblegum and Marceline being in a relationship. And you know what's also saddening is that every single time Finn got with a girl, all of them ended up leaving him, either for another guy or just for each other. Like in the case of Princess Bubblegum and Marceline. And so, and the only one who won was Jake with his unicorn girlfriend who speaks Korean, I believe, all the time, and she's literally a rainbow, but nobody had a problem with that kind of relationship. But with Finn, I would say like I wouldn't have minded Marceline and Princess Bubblegum being in a relationship if they were in a relationship from the beginning, or they were planned to be in a relationship from the beginning and they were never meant to be with Finn, and so that's why you wouldn't feel like there wouldn't be like this kind of like animosity that I would say, or it wouldn't be as alienating. Like if Finn basically had a girlfriend all along, he had a stable, something like Jake, for example, then I wouldn't mind like the lesbian relationship. But because they decided to go for that, and we all knew that Finn used to be with both of them, not at the same time, but like at different points, then it's kind of like it's just no longer the same show. And then with Steven Universe, it used to be like there was this lesbian relationship between the like the blue girl and the red girl, and whenever I first watched it, I was like, oh, cool. And the reason as to why I didn't mind it as much was because the story wasn't about it's just like they were that from the beginning, and also like Carnet, you wouldn't be seeing Carnet like blue and red girls being you wouldn't be seeing the relationship 24/7, so it wasn't as alienating. And then whenever you also had like Connie with Steven, what I would say is that there was like a huge deviation was whenever like the characters started having like these different pronouns and genders. I think that was the first series that had the first non-binary character. But the problem is that it's just like weird. That's the best way to say it. And again, this is coming from someone who watches anime and knows what a stolful is. So if someone weird calls something else weird, then that must tell a lot. It's kind of like if the Joker calls someone crazy. If the crazy guy calls you crazy, then there really is something worrisome about it. And so in this case, it's like I would say that non-binary stories and like trans stories is like they're not as popular because they're just like they're new concepts. And if in my opinion, I am more familiar with trans concept than non-binary concept, because through the logical lens I can understand trans people, but with the non-binary people I can't, because basically it's what they feel is much more on an intrinsic level, and they barely try to like have a definitive appearance. Meanwhile with trans people, they do try to change their appearance and they do try to be part of the other gender. or look like the other gender, like the gender they wish to be. And so it's more understandable. But again, that's just me. And the overall population of the world, um, if they can barely understand what trans is, just how it must be for like when it comes to non-binary stuff, they'd be like, they wouldn't even know what that thing is. They would be like, okay, if to them, trans concepts about trans people is like very like hard to understand, then concepts about non-binary people, it must be like something out of this world for them. And yeah, it's just like, it's literally like, even with like the whole two-spirited thing, is it's just that it's just like confusing, I would say. And that's not to like demean them or anything. Like, people should be allowed to like express themselves and self-identify as whatever they want. But what they shouldn't be allowed to do is basically wish for people to go to jail just for like not wanting to play along their self-identity. Yeah, like for example, if I call myself, I don't know, the king of gaming, but then everyone else calls me, doesn't calls me the king of the gaming, well then that's just basically how it is. And if I get upset about it, then that's just it. Like, yeah, like, you should be able to express yourself, but you shouldn't, you shouldn't expect other people to respect but you shouldn't expect other people to accept form of expression, your form of expression, and by that I mean like in a way that's more like personal. Like, when it comes to like just being exposed to it, like, oh, someone wearing like non-binary flags or just calling themselves that, I just keep scrolling. That's it. But if then we get to the point where we have like, oh, non-binary people now they're basically like crashing out over pronouns, then yeah, no, don't. You're like, you're just being a bit too much. It's kind of like the same thing with furries, you can be a furry if you want, go ahead, but don't go crashing out over people finding your hobby weird, you know. And it's the same with, like the like with the lolicon stuff and the shotacon stuff, like because it's all fictional, doesn't exist, that stuff. Yeah, it doesn't, it shouldn't, like, you should be able to like enjoy that stuff or just express yourself that way, but you shouldn't crash out over people finding, again, your likes, you liking that stuff weird. Like, it's the same thing with like, say, fan service and ecchi games. Like, I can enjoy those things all I want, but I cannot crash out over people calling me a gooner over it. Like, I'm not gonna crash out over it. Now, sure, I may not like it, but I'm not gonna go and say like, go and directly reply to this person like, oh, F you, you POS, you piece of shit, Like, I'm not gonna go and crash out over it, because that's just it, Like, you can express yourself, you shouldn't be allowed to basically to crash out over that stuff, because at that point that's just like loser behavior. Anyways, it's a huge tangent. Let's watch this video. It's 4 minutes, and like, how long have I been alive for? 1 hour and 36 minutes. Not good. Anyways,
What is going on? How are you getting this fan following? And honestly, I've just been saying, look out there and give all these incredibly talented up-and-coming creators a chance. There's so many incredible stories waiting to be told, so many new art styles waiting to be shown.
That's right.
People just need a chance.
With all that said, we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. In fact, we have a lot more planned.
A lot more, Kevin! That's right, guys. We actually have the foreseeable future all planned out with a lot of stuff for you guys. We have Digital Circus, we have the Gaslight District, our new show coming very soon.
We have the finale of Murder Jones on its way.
And also we have a few unannounced projects coming up as well. all of which could only be made possible because you guys have been watching our stuff and you've been supporting us through buying the merchandise. We do want to keep up this momentum, and more support from you guys would be incredibly, incredibly appreciated. And that's why we started the Glitch In, because we wanted to give an avenue for you guys to support while still giving back to you guys with something really cool.
And a way of giving back, we thought, was sharing a lot of behind the scenes and just cool, fun stuff that goes on at Glitch. Like glitches, funny stories, just memes, just so much different things. Like, for example, did you know Jay was originally designed to be a guy?
Oh.
And did you know that Pomni's original first design was a frog?
What?
What exactly is the Glitch In? Well, it's a warm and cozy place where all our fans can just rest and talk to each other.
But quite literally,
It's a warm and
That's N, that's Pomni, that's Tari, that's Kane, that's Jax. I don't know who this one is.
cozy place where all our fans can just rest and talk to each other.
But quite literally, the Glitch In is a website and a Discord. On the website, we'll be listing out all of the behind-the-scenes tidbits every week, just for you guys to see. We'll be also listing up all the upcoming events we have for all of our Glitch In members. And also there'll be a link to the Discord where we'll be hanging around, our artists will be there, and our directors, for example, Goose and Liam, will be popping in every now and then to interact with you guys. In fact, an upcoming thing we have is an AMA with Goose very, very soon. And we're going to be asking her a bunch of questions, and one of them is going to be, Goose, what's Jack's favorite website?
Thank you very much, Goose. So feel free to join the Glitch In.
I would assume that Goose's, no, not Goose, Jax's favorite website is, based on Jax's personality. Jax is he's a tsundere at most, and he loves teasing people. So Jax would go, his favorite website would be Twitter. Yeah, Twitter.
Over at glitchin.com.
It is $9.99 USD monthly to join, and you'll get everything that we talked about. And guys, every single dollar goes directly into supporting our shows, goes into supporting everything that we do, and there's no pressure at all. Everything you guys have been doing already, we tremendously appreciate, and this is just a little bit extra on top that will go a long way for everything that we want to do.
Those little animated chibi inhabitants you saw earlier, those are called animaties. And who knows, maybe you'll see more animated content of them in the future.
Guys, thank you so much. We will see you over at the Glitch In very, very soon.
Thank you so much for supporting us. Bye-bye, guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, this was a great video from Glitch. Obviously this was made 1 year ago, but I would say go and support them. If they still have this Glitch In available, go and support them, because I definitely love the Amazing Digital Circus merchants. And I haven't checked the Gaslight District, but I will check it out. So I want to see more. So the more support, the more shows they will pump out. So yeah, it was a great video.